Cool. Hey folks, nice to have you. We are back. This is actually our second webinar of the day. Rachel and I just talked and we had an opportunity to go grab a quick drink and a bite and come back. And so it's nice to have all of the folks from the different IUs on the call today. If you're just coming in, and we're going to let people roll in here for a second, but if you're just coming in, we are talking about digital ADA document accessibility today. Primarily, we're going to talk about PDF documents. If you've had your ear to the ground for a while, you probably know about the DOJ ruling that says that those documents have to be accessible. We were given a bit of a reprieve. That ruling was supposed to take place a little more than a year ago. We were given a reprieve for an additional year, and the new deadlines are coming up in April. We're going to talk a little bit about that today. We're going to talk a little bit about how to do this so that we can do it efficiently for the districts that we are serving. There are a whole host of documents out there that are going to have to be remediated to keep our districts in compliance with the new rule and to make sure that, from a moral perspective, right, that community members actually have access to these documents when they need them. We're going to talk about that. We think we've built or uncovered a better mousetrap, so to speak, Rachel, right? So the, traditional way of doing document accessibility, if you've ever done it before, was very manual, very intensive, and very difficult to do at scale. We're going to show you today a system that other districts are using throughout Pennsylvania and that other IUs can use as well to support the districts that they serve. And we're going to show you how it reduces the amount of time it takes to make documents accessible. We're going to show you how it increases the level of compliance and the proof of compliance that you have. And we're going to show you how you can create a process to do that so that you don't necessarily need to remediate every document that's in your universe, or your districts don't need to remediate every document that's in their universe, but they can take a very intentional approach to how they remediate their documents. So, Rachel, it's good to have you. I'm Corey with Rocket PD. If you don't know Rocket PD, we built a community of 40,000 plus educators, and we are committed to helping districts find solutions to persistent challenges that they have. This is one of those challenges that we heard about from our community. Digital document accessibility was approaching. Folks didn't really have a very good solution or idea for it. Again, we think we found one. Rachel, I'll have you introduce yourself as well and talk to the group, and then we'll get into it.
Well, it's great to be here, everyone. And I'm Rachel Holler. I'm with the Bucks IU team, and I am an assistant executive director. And I really appreciate, I know it's the summer and the throes of getting ready for the start of the school year. So we appreciate you taking some time out just to learn a little bit more. And we hope it's going to be a win-win. It's in a time saver for you. We wanted to share this as soon as we learned about accessibility on demand. We thought about ways we could bring this to really all of Pennsylvania because we think it's a win-win.
What you're going to see today, you can kind of think about it maybe like where your teams could think about it like a printer that sits in their office. It's all digital, but it is a utility. It allows you to feed documents into it and to get those documents back to a high standard of fidelity to that WCAG standard that you've been hearing a lot about, and allows you to make a plan for how to help your districts and your partners get compliant, because there are so many documents out there. Rachel and I were just talking about that before we got on the call. So let's talk a little bit about accessibility as sort of a fast-growing operational challenge. Rachel, the new federal ADA digital accessibility rule that we mentioned, it does impact all LEAs across Pennsylvania, and you can talk a little bit about that. We are through Bucks IU and our partnership with ArtScan and Accessibility on Demand, offering all the IUs an opportunity to opt into a partnership, and Rachel will give you the details. And really the goal is going to be to reduce the risk of non-compliance for folks, right? To reduce the workload in trying to remediate documents, which again, if you've ever tried to do this, the workload is intense. It is not scalable. People do have processes for this, and it's often very reactionary. We're going to show you a way to be less reactionary and to create more of a process to reduce that workload and reduce the cost ahead of the deadlines. And we'll talk about the deadlines and how they've shifted in just a second. Rachel, anything that you want to add to that the IUs should be aware of?
Well, we see this as both an something that you as intermediate unit professionals may find a use for, but then also you may find that this is something you want to bring to your district. So there's two kind of pathways. You might choose both. You might choose one or the other, but there's two opportunities for you to benefit from accessibility on demand.
So before we get into it and we start to show you some of this stuff, let's talk about that rule for a second. If you've been following this in the news, you probably already know a little bit about it. You're probably certainly familiar with the WCAG 2.1 Level 2A standard. This is sort of the baseline standard that the Department of Justice is using. This is what we have worked with Accessibility on Demand to get all of our reporting documentation toward. And again, this includes a lot of stuff. Today, we're talking primarily about PDFs. You know, other folks are talking about websites and mobile apps and different things that need to be compliant. But those pesky PDF documents, they are everywhere. They're up on your websites, and I'm sure I have multiple websites. They're in, you know, they're in schools, they're in offices, they are all over the place, and we often don't know when they're getting uploaded or about how many are there. Rachel will probably talk about in a minute about how many they found in a cursory scan of their own operations. But they apply to all sorts of stuff. You know, we're talking about those board materials. People are often asking for minutes, right? They're asking for things that happened at board meetings. We're talking about policies. We're talking about forms. This is, you know, coming up on the beginning of the school year, which is like, you know, the time for forms. All of those need to be accessible, those 504 documents, and of course, public facing communications that districts do with community members. Anything that I missed, Rachel?
No, I mean, I think the list could go on and on. There's so many different ways that some of your own districts that you serve are maybe using PDFs or different, different ways that they could be going astray, let's say, and not being compliant. I know for us as an intermediate unit, we maybe breathe a sigh of relief, and we'll talk about the change in timelines. But what we really we were looking for is what do we do when you think about board materials? We might have a fully compliant document of, beautiful. It's everything's there's styles being used. There's no color contrast issues. Everything is great. We save it as a PDF. We send it to a vendor. We say, please sign and return to us. And what will the vendor do? They'll scan it back. Well, now you probably know all the wonderful formatting is essentially ruined. And we said, what are we going to do? How are we going to make this work? And when we saw the demo with accessibility on demand, I breathed a big sigh of relief because I said, this is going to be a big help to us to really systematize some standard operating procedures around being ready for all the public facing documents that we have just for board documents alone. That kind of piece, I think, is maybe I think all of us as intermediate units have a board that we report to, and then those documents are public. So how do we make sure that that alone is a big, heavy lift? How can we make it a much easier lift? This is where we found accessibility on demand to be a big game changer.
Cool. So, and we're going to show you a couple of examples of some of the stuff that we've been able to remediate to a pretty high degree in just a second. Before we do, I wanted to point out, you know, with accessibility, it is ongoing. It's not a one-time project. I think when you see stuff like this and you think about all the documents that you have to do, you have a tendency to kind of feel like a deer in headlights. It was great that they extended that deadline. People certainly needed the time. That time does give us an opportunity to create processes to make sure that we can do this in a responsible and effective way, which is great. Again, that deadline's kind of already around the corner again, because once you get into school here in the next month or so, it's a blur for a couple of months, and pretty soon you're staring at the end of fall into winter, and then you're back in spring. So it's going to come faster probably than we think, but the good news is it's ongoing. It's not a one-time project, which means you don't have to do all of your documents at once, and your districts don't have to do all of their documents at once. This is about creating a process in order to figure out what's most important, kind of take a DEFCON approach, right? And do the most important things first, and then secondly, do additional things, and then beyond that. It also gives you an opportunity to do some gardening. You might not need to actually remediate all of the documents that are out there. In fact, you might have an opportunity to take down a lot of documents that you don't need to spend time or headspace on because those can be removed. So this is an opportunity both to clean up, right, as well as to remediate documents that you will need and spend the time where the time is needed. Okay, so the clock is running for those Pennsylvania IUs who are on the call here. Rachel, we mentioned that we did get some more time, but there still is a deadline to this, and I just wanted to put it up here on the screen for folks. Again, the extension was for a year. This was a little bit ago, so we have a little less than a year now, but April 26, 2027 for public entities serving 50,000 or more population, and April 2028 for entities serving populations of 50,000 or less. That is a little bit up for debate, right? Because I think that your interpretation of entities is, well, it's not just the number of students you serve, it's not just the number of teachers you serve, it's the number of community members and folks in your broader community. That's been our understanding of it. We always ask folks to check with their legal team, right, in their own institutions to understand what category that they fall into. But Rachel, I believe from our last call that's your understanding as well.
That is, we are interpreting it as if the footprint that we serve has more than 50,000 people. It's not like just looking at students.
Yeah. So again, if we start early, it prevents sort of expensive last minute remediation. We can stop being reactionary and start being intentional. And that's really what today's call is all about and what we're going to show you that we think can help. Again, intent isn't really the problem here. Rachel, we mentioned this earlier. I think the reality is everyone wants to provide access to documents. I had brought up in a previous call, my own personal story is that I'm someone with cerebral palsy. Well, I went to public school in Maryland. And when I did, I had a really positive experience. I had a lot of folks who were willing to go above and beyond for me, so much so that I my disability was largely invisible to me, and people could see but I didn't think about it because people would pull me out of class and they would give me special instruction about things that you might not think about, but that would be distracting to me, like how to carry my book bag differently, how to go up and down stairs in a crowded hallway, how to go in and out of doorways so I wouldn't get knocked over, like things that you might not think about, but for me, would have otherwise distracted me from my education. I think about that a lot, and one of the reasons that Rocket PD got involved with this is because it's a passion project for me. I want to help ensure that kids who need it, quite frankly, more than I ever did, have that access. And that really is about when you think about these documents, the gap that you have when someone has to wait for a document in order to receive it. That gap can be a real problem because a student who has that interruption then starts to fall behind. And again, I was fortunate that I did not fall behind because people were always looking to help me close those gaps. We want to help students and communities close those gaps as well so that they can stay on pace and that they can learn effectively and not have to think too much about those distractions that pull them away from their education. So again, a really powerful idea, I think, for us, why we got involved with it. And I think a lot of people see that. But the reality is like capacity is a problem. You might want to do that. And prior to what we're about to show you, even if you wanted to do it, it was probably impossible because you can see here, and Rachel will talk a little bit about the number of documents that we're looking at and thinking about when it comes to compliance.
Yeah, so it's no secret since I'm in Bucks County that we took a deeper look at Bucks County in partnership with Rocket PD and ArchScan, and we discovered that of our 13 school districts, there were about 8,000 PDFs out there on on websites, et cetera, for people to find. That's a lot of documents, and then when you start to look at the pages, it was like over 100,000 pages. So if we said to our districts, start now, start moving, it could take. I mean, you can imagine how much time and capacity it would take if they had to go document by document, take a look at it, work through it. And the gardening analogy is a great one that Corey uses. I think some of those documents are probably can be taken down at this point. There's a lot of website overreach or just things that they get put up there once and then they stay for years. This is a great time to start to do some of that purging and cleaning up. But at the same time, it's also an indicator that as we start to move into the new school year, how many documents can you make sure are remediated before you put them up? So we're starting to change our practice. We're starting to work through that, the compliance with digital accessibility. And so we like this accessibility and demand tool can be a game changer for that. If you asked, support staff or, some of your team members to start to do that document by document and hand remediate, it could be the whole summer, it could be the whole fall, it could take like a countless hours. So just making sure to go beyond that manual remediation. This is where, I think it's going to be a time saver for everyone.
Yeah, and Rachel mentioned that limited staff time and limited accessibility expertise too. Like that's interesting. Even if you have folks who are helping with this, they may or may not have the accessibility expertise. What we're going to show you not only gives you your documents back in an efficient way, but also gives you reporting so you can see the level to which they have been remediated relative to the standard that we mentioned, which is that WCAG to a standard. So that's going to be really important. We'll show you that in a second. Again, that manual remediation is slow. It is just hard to sustain if you've ever done this before or tried to. I used to be a technology reporter, an ed tech reporter, when I came out of college, and I used to go all around the country looking at this stuff. And one of the things I wrote about was special education. And I would watch people sit and try to remediate documents, literally stand over their shoulder and take hours to do this. The technology has gotten better since then, but it is not scalable. And what we're going to show you is. So we hope you stick around to see that. The risks of waiting. Lawsuits and OCR complaints are rising nationwide. I have a stat that I've kind of been talking about. I keep this piece of paper next to my desk because I've done so many of these. OCR complaints have tripled since 2024. That's significant. I mentioned to Rachel, I filed an OCR complaint against Disney for myself earlier this year. There's a whole thing going on with their accessibility that's ruffled some feathers. But just an example, like, these things happen. 40% of those OCR complaints that are out there are ADA related. They're a good portion of what's out there is ADA related. I read that there was something like 8,000, I think that's a 457 such complaints for school districts since 2024, and that number's probably increased. But you can see that it's an issue. What we mentioned that we didn't want to be ambulance chasers with this or really dwell on the legal piece because I think there is a moral imperative to this that we've sketched out, and everyone can largely agree to that. But the reality is that these things are out there. When they do happen, they create massive distractions. They also create a reduction in trust that needs to be rebuilt. When you can avoid these things, it not only saves you money, but it also allows you to operate more seamlessly and effectively and stay focused on the right things, which are outcomes. So that's really important. Again, those inaccessible documents block access to families and students, and that's where the trouble often starts. Rich, I don't know if you have anything you want to add to that.
Well, I just would say that it's that curb cut effect. This is something that can be beneficial for everyone by taking the time to make sure that the documents are accessible. You might not even know who you're serving or helping by doing that. So just like the curb cuts originally were designed for perhaps wheelchairs, and that now we see so many people using them for so many different things. We've used that analogy with our own work in Bucks County with our school districts, and I think that's resonated for people as a way to just remember this is going to be a benefit for everyone.
For sure. For sure. Go to the next slide here. So I wanted to point this out because someone brought it up to me and I've heard it a couple times echoed. So in addition to accessibility for your students and your staff, a lot of folks are starting to use AI in their back office operations to increase efficiencies. And I know, AI has been under fire in education, particularly on the curriculum side, but it also is being used to a large degree on the back office and operations side to create efficiencies. And what often happens is that if you have inaccessible documents, you get poor outputs from your AI and your systems. And the reason for that sometimes is that the AI won't tell you necessarily that it was unable to access something. So imagine, if you will, you're all probably familiar with like ChatGPT, and you were in there and you were running a query and you uploaded some documents to ChatGPT and you asked for an output. And it gives you an output, and as you're reading the output, you're saying, this feels incomplete to me. Now I know I fed this document into the system. Why didn't it recognize it or include it in its analysis? And you might type in, hey, did you see that document that I included? Oh, yes, I saw it, but I could not access it, so I did not include it. I had to prompt it in order for it to tell me that. So, if your documents are not accessible, you may unknowingly be getting returns that are incomplete or ineffective or, quite frankly, wrong. And so this matters not only from an accessibility standpoint for your public, but also for your back office. And if you are using these types of systems to increase efficiency, you've heard the slogan or the moniker, right? Garbage in, garbage out. Well, this applies to that. So I did want to bring that up. Rachel, I know this is something that you guys think about when you think about workflows and efficiencies within, your business, and I know a lot of other IUs are thinking about that as well. Okay, so the work here is ongoing, friends. This is going to be a continuous effort, um, not a one-time project. So again, when you think about that deadline that's upcoming, it's not saying that every document that we have in our universe needs to be compliant. It is saying that we need to start now creating a process that's going to enable us to do this with fidelity and not be so reactionary, right? Because when we're not reactionary, that's when we're able to build trust, to demonstrate that we have a system, and really to create that relationship between our districts and ourselves, or our community members, that says we understand how this works, we support it, and we have a process that's in place that's going to enable people to get access to what they need. Again, those traditional workflows have to evolve. There are too many documents out there, Rachel, right? I mean, we've seen it. There's no way we could do this manually. There are new documents being added every day. As those documents get added, your backlog grows. We need to be able to meet rising needs.
Absolutely. And I'll just as one example, one of our districts has kind of been wanting to be inclusive of their community. And so community members send in flyers, and then those flyers are posted on their website. And I said, pause there, start to take a look at those flyers. It's very likely that the vast majority, if not all of them, are not even close to being compliant. But again, here's a tool that could help with that.
For sure. And we're gonna show you this in a second. Before we do, I wanted to talk about just like the cost of this. Like if you put on your business hat for a second, it's pretty obvious why districts, even if they wanted to, couldn't possibly remediate everything. At $5 to $25 per page on average when you're talking about manual remediation, and you think that some documents have hundreds, thousands of pages. It's just was financially impossible. We're going to show you again something that reduces that cost per page all the way up to as much as 90% or more, right? We underestimate the volume. To Rachel's point earlier, that is 8,000 PDFs that were discovered. That was a cursory examination. If you're seeing that many on a cursory examination, your universe is probably much larger than that. And of course, staff time is so limited. We know that everyone's wearing 15 different hats. Budgets are being cut. As budgets are being cut, staff is being reduced. The problem only compounds. And so to be able to free people up in a way that enables them to get the work done that they need to get done is really, really important in this day and age.
Well, just one example, comprehensive plans, right? You work on putting that all the information into the Future Ready Comprehensive Planning Portal. When it comes out of as a report from the Future Ready Comprehensive Planning Portal, it is not compliant. It is not accessible. And PDE might acknowledge that, but my understanding is there's no plans to change that system. So then it's on you to do all that, that work. Now, before we had accessibility on demand, and our plan is now in going into year 2, but we spent some summertime actually going page by page and doing all of the styles and the headers and all that and it's full of tables. It's a complete hot mess when it comes to that kind of stuff. And so it took hours of time to remediate that. And thinking about the level of staff who were working on it, it was probably more than $5 to $25 per page in the sense of how many hours of time that someone could have done other things and instead was remediating the document. Now that we have accessibility on demand, if we put that document through, even if it's over 100 pages, I said that's time well spent. It's looking at the price point of how much we're spending on getting that remediation. It is so much more affordable than wasting someone's time doing that manually. So that to me is a big game changer. And we have a couple examples to show you of just things that we've been looking at as an intermediate unit that you might say, oh, I can make that connection for things that we're doing as well. That may be a win-win for you.
Yeah, the uncalculated time loss is significant, and what that equates to in terms of financial losses is significant for sure. So let's talk a little bit about accessibility on demand and what it is. We're not going to do like a live demo on this call. The cool thing about this is it's pretty easy to talk about, and you can kind of see on the right-hand side really the whole thing. And I'm going to explain it to you, and then I'm going to have Rachel talk through some of the specifics and give you actual examples of documents that their IU used and the reporting that they got back. But what you see in the background is essentially a file sharing portal. You're probably familiar with that type of thing. And you can upload large documents in batches to that portal. When you upload them, you click a button, the process starts, the remediation process starts. You get your documents back, sometimes in a matter of seconds, sometimes in a matter of minutes, sometimes a little longer depending on the size of the files. And then you, in addition to that, get what you see on the bottom left-hand side, which is the report that Rachel mentioned. This report is significant because when you get it back, this tells you the level of the WCAG standard to which the document was remediated. Rachel's going to talk to you about the process that Bucks County is using to keep the report alongside the document in its files so that if there are questions about compliance, you can show the report. Now, the cool thing about this is we have run so many of these, and you very rarely get a report back that is below 95 to 97% compliance, which on a good faith effort is usually good enough. If you need to go higher than that for whatever reason, or if your IU or just wants a higher standard where there are particular things that it wants to change, you see in the bottom right hand side, you're able to, within this portal, go directly into the document and hotfix or correct that document, as it were, and then serve it out or run it back through and get another report. So, Rachel, I know you probably want to talk a little bit about that. You gave some great examples on our last call, and then we can kind of show some of these that you've run through.
Absolutely. So I think that we are one of the things I'll mention is that this is not a document repository. So it's not like a place where you'd store all your documents forever. If you think about, I mean, if you think about your Google Drive or other things that you have, can you imagine the hot mess that might be over time? Because it's just, you want to have an organizational system. That's what we've been working through on our end is, okay, so how do we manage this? So we have two examples to share with you that I'm hoping will resonate for all of you as you also think about board management and making sure things are transparent for your own board members. And then you think about from a district lens how this is pretty much one and the same. So every month we have bills for payment that we share with our board. Here's all the checks that were run. Here's the information about those purchases. And tables are one of the most challenging things in terms of making sure that a screen reader would be able to manage that appropriately. So you can see here, we ran this through the system and I said, oh my gosh, this could be really tricky to like, how's it going to handle this? These were some of the test cases we started with was if this is this platform going to work for us, let's give it some of the more challenging documents from a readability standpoint, because tables we thought are probably one of the most challenging things. So we ran this through, the accessibility on demand, got the report back, and you can see that on the next screen there's the actual report that we have. It's really it shows just how well the system did. So Corey, can you go to the next screen and we'll show the
Yep.
actual compliance report. So there it is. It's we know that you can't see the nitty gritty on a call like this. This is something we would, go over in more of an advanced demo. But you can see here what does show up pretty clearly is the 100% on the screen. So you can see there we hit that level of 100% from a WCAG level AA, and that is great. Now that doesn't mean necessarily that we won't look at the document itself and say, is it reading everything to the degree that we want it to? Do we want to mess around with the header or the read of the way it's reading across the page? But this is something that gave us a big sigh of relief when we thought about all the business documents that we submit to the board every month that are publicly accessible. So therefore they have to be now digitally accessible. And so how do we make sure that those documents are in place? So what our plan is, and we're working on standard operating procedures right now to put them in operationalized by probably January. So we are ahead of the curve this time. I would be full disclosure. I don't think we would have been ready if the April deadline hadn't been extended a year. We were struggling, and especially when it came to PDFs, and we had found ArchGAN right around maybe February, March. So we were like, okay, we think we have a solution, but now we have the runway to really put it into place. But that idea is we'd save the document ultimately that's been remediated and have that remediated PDF, but then we will also download and save this report that you see on the screen here, and we're going to file those together on our end. We are not going to put the compliance report publicly on the website or on board docs or Keystone Agenda for people to see, but in terms of that idea of now we have them all filed every month in a system. If someone were to say, BucksIU, your documents aren't compliant on Keystone Agenda, we could say, oh, well, yes, they are. And here's the proof of everything that we've been doing over time.
Yeah, really important. Oh, share this one. This one is wild.
So here's our personnel agenda. So again, a publicly accessible document that is available on on every board agenda. We have this document. And at first, I said to the team back in like last fall, you're going to have to blow this up and start over. This isn't going to work. There's no way that we're going to be able to get this to a level of compliance. And you can take a look here that why I put a couple things on the screen at the same time. And I know they're small, but you can kind of get the general like formatting. Take a look at and compare the left-hand side of the screen with the right-hand side of the screen. And you notice there in the right-hand side, there's an extra column there in the middle. That's a disaster when it comes to tables and reading and order and everything. It really can be like the game, end game. You just can't move forward because of that kind of a situation. You also notice there's like separate columns for dates. That there's two columns of dates versus the others. It's so hard to make sure that a full document like this is going to read well. And it might have taken us, we were thinking about how do we change the whole entire format and how we're doing it, or we're going to need to just spend hours remediating these documents each month. If you go to the next screen, Corey, you're going to see that it's even more exciting in the sense that there's some examples on the bottom of that page where not only do we have now different numbers of columns, but we also, we merge cells. Well, those of you who know a lot about tables and screen readers, not a good idea. And so now we have different size cells and merge cells and everything on top of it. And to make it even more exciting, on the right-hand side, that is actually an image that was taken from another document that's included. I mean, when I learned how our HR team does amazing work, but when I learned what they were doing, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to have a headache. I don't know how we're going to be able to manage this. So I worked with our HR team. We've experimented with accessibility on demand. Let's run this through. And what a relief. We got to a 100% score without even going to the higher level of remediation needed. Now, I will say we went back and said, okay, that's great, but there's some things as we look at the readability and we go and open the document in the accessibility on demand platform. There were some things we said, you know what? That's even though it's fully accessible, the reading level of the headers is not quite right for a couple of these things. Let's move this around a little bit because it's so wonky, those reports. Let's make sure that it really is reading in the order we intended it to. We have these little like letters like A, B, C, D on the side column that no screen reader is going to figure that out, or no accessibility that could be the most amazing platform ever. It's never going to understand our intent. So we work through to try to fix a couple things that we're going to need to fix every month for the report. But we're talking about, we spent 5 minutes, ran it through, got it back, and then figured out what we need to remediate, which is very minimal. And we have this report to back us up. that was for us when we came, my HR team member who was working with me on this said, "Oh my gosh, this is amazing." I was like, "I know it's magic. It feels like a magic product because of the way it was able to remediate a pretty wonky multi-field Excel, putting it all together into a PDF kind of a document. It really can handle those kinds of things." And I've seen demos with our accessibility on demand where it takes the t most terrible like scan of something and it figures it out. So I've been so impressed with some of the things that I've seen in demos, but we thought we'd give you two really practical ideas or practical examples from our lens, from a Bucks IU lens, and what we're planning on using it for, just to give you some food for thought to move forward.
Yeah, there are all sorts of different types of documents, and you can kind of get a sense from these. I think what Rachel really hit the nail on the head on was this automation first approach, right? Which is we used to take a manual approach first, and that would mean everything that we needed to do, we would react to, and we would do it manually. What AOD and ArtScan kind of say is take an automation first approach, get the stuff through the system. Then, to Rachel's point, once it's through, you can focus on the particular things that you might want to improve or change. And that saves you an inordinate amount of time and resource. And so that's what we've told folks. This isn't about um, flipping a switch. It is about really increasing or giving more power to your team to do more in the time that they have. And that has been the aha moment for a lot of the districts that we've talked to, right? You can scan these documents quickly. You can quickly automate that tagging, that reading order, those edge cases, those different things. And then again, you get that compliance report, which is the proof that you need or the peace of mind that you need. And that's very important because, again, it's often the gap between the time that it takes to remediate something that gets you into trouble, right? Because that's where things start to happen, where somebody complains, a complaint gets filed, something gets litigated. When you can close that gap, you reduce the risk of those types of things happening because you reduce the amount of time that you have for them to happen, and you increase the amount of trust that you have with your community or whoever you are serving because they believe that you're making a good faith effort to support them. So I have a friend at Digital Promise by the name of Jean-Claude Brizard who used this term with me, and I've seen it in other places, but I like how he talked about it. Human in the loop. And I think that's the way a lot of school districts are starting to look at technology. I think for a long time, it felt like tech was being pushed down on schools. We want to serve it up in a way that helps solve problems with the administrators and the educators in the loop to use it more effectively to solve problems that they have in their work and in their daily life in the school systems, whether it's on the administrative side or on the education side. Anything you want to add to that, Rachel?
No, I think you addressed it perfectly, and I think now we can kind of share where do we go from here? What are the next steps? So, there's two things that or two ways you can get involved, and this is, and you might decide to go with the first way and kind of do a proof of concept first before you move forward. You could do both at the same time. It's really up to your own IU if you're interested in this kind of seems like a solution for you. So option one, you can purchase for your own IU. And so just like we as a Bucks IU are using it, we are really excited to be able to extend a savings. We were able to work with our friends from Rocket PD and ArchScan to get some consortium pricing or reduced pricing. So we are extending that to you at 7.5% savings on both the credits as well as the professional service hours. And a little sidebar that I don't think we mentioned yet is that these credits and service hours do not expire. So just like if you're thinking about, oh my gosh, how many do we need for next year versus the following year? We bought ourselves a big bank, and then that way we can kind of work our way through them over time. But we thought that that was going to be our best solution, especially since they do not expire. But you can opt in with us via a partnership agreement that we have in place that would allow you to purchase at that reduced savings. And so we'll have some things at the end of this in just a few minutes to tell you how to move forward with that idea. The other option is that we do have the opportunity for you to also extend this to your districts and say, we want to tell you about it. In order for us to work through this and really be a partner for ArchScan and Rocket PD through the Commonwealth, this is the direction we wanted to go. So Corey, if you want to go to the next slide, I'll
Oh
share
yeah.
with them the information on the referral. So if you refer interested LEAs through the revenue share referral partnership, we will extend you a 2.5% savings. You don't have to do anything else. There's no action on your end. We'll own all the process from that forward, but we will keep track and give you 2.5% savings on or revenue share for that. And as well, we'll also extend a 2.5% savings to your LEAs. So they're saving a little bit of money off of the retail price, but then you're also for referring them to us, you'll get a revenue share as well. And so we have, in order to keep things clean from a business practices perspective, we have one agreement for the actual purchasing, because we figured if you're putting this to your board for approval, and expenditure versus revenue all in one gets confusing. So we have one area where you'd have the expenditure side of things where you would be making the purchase. We have the revenue share opportunity as well, and that one would be something you present to your board as a revenue. And so we have both of those as options for you, and you choose your own adventure. If you'd like to do both at once, if you'd like to do option one, if you'd like to do option two, if you'd like to decide on kind of taking baby steps, we will help you through whichever option you were interested in.
Cool. Yeah, and I'm going to throw up a QR code at the end of this that gives you an opportunity to get 100 free credits and try this with some of your own documents so you can see what Rachel and the team at Buckseye Use saw. And when you do that, you also have an opportunity afterwards to, schedule a call and talk through some of the specifics about the process that you want to take. So this really is an informational session, and there are some things we're going to give you and plenty of time for you to kind of work through this process and decide which path you want to take. So let's talk a little bit about compliance without overloading our staff, right? I think we talked about this thing where you can feel like a deer in headlights. Even though we got some more time, the time is ticking, and there are a lot of documents out there. Well, this is going to help us do a couple of things well. We're going to be able to eliminate those document backlogs, which we mentioned are growing every day. Once you get to a stable position, right now you can do that continuous monitoring, right? And you can keep compliance current. It's difficult to do that again when you feel like you're working from underneath a pile. And so, we're going to think about how to start with the most priority documents, kind of get on stable footing, and then create a process to keep us current, knowing that like there's no 100% of all documents being compliant ever. It's just not a thing, but you have a tool now available to you when something does come up to make a good faith effort to make that compliant, to be able to do it quickly, to avoid some of the things that happen in the time between non-compliance and compliance. So that's great. And again, of course, those reports that Rachel mentioned, which you can give to your board or for an audit review. So this really puts it all together. Okay, so what kind of documents should we start with here? What documents are you guys starting with at Bucks IU, Rachel?
Well, you heard me mention already. So we're using it for really focusing right now on board facing documents. So it's things that we are putting and attaching to our board motions, and so we decided to start with that. But I think that we see the use case expanding beyond that to a variety of different avenues. I know that if we had a do-over, since our comprehensive plan is not up for being redone until another year from now, but when we do the next comprehensive plan, I have every intention of running that through accessibility on demand because I know how much time it took us to remediate that before we posted it for public consumption. So that's something that, those are the kinds of things that we're starting with. I think that our hope is that we are training up our teachers who are in the classroom working with students, that we don't give them that access. We're going to keep it at like kind of a central office or level at this point. We might have some high stress areas though, where we do need to take some some IEPs for some students and run them through to make sure that those are accessible. But we're starting really right now with the public facing board type of documents. And that may be a place that you choose to start. I know that I was in talking to our school districts. So many of them, they all do their own thing, which, in Bucks County. And so some of them might start in different places. Some of them might start with the community facing documents when they are receiving them from the community to post on their website. Some of them might choose to start with the same idea that we are. And some of them might go to the classroom level with certain things. It's going to depend, I think, on each LEA, how they face these next steps.
The good news is you have the ability through planning and the time that we have before the deadline to kind of figure out the process that works for your community. So that's great and it's malleable. I'm putting up here what you'll see, which is the difference. Remember in the earlier slide, we talked about that $5 to $25 a page, insurmountable. Now you're looking at 30 cents to $8 a page at max. Rachel will tell you like that 30% is where 90% of this stuff comes in at. Or 30 cent mark is where 90% of this stuff comes in at. And with that 7.5%, I believe it is discount, right? It's even lower than that. And so what was insurmountable and just like impossible really before because of the cost piece alone, even if you really truly wanted to do this, the cost would make it prohibitive. Now it is not. And it's not to a significant degree, a 90% in some cases or more reduction in cost. And of course, flexible pricing by document type, meaning there are two tiers that you can do documents in, one or two, and your tokens would change depending, just like a vending machine. If you wanted, the M&Ms versus Doritos, the price might be a little bit different, but it's two different tiers. And then, of course, you can pull stuff out and do it manually if you need to do that. But the cool part is, Rachel, you pay only for what you need, right? This isn't SaaS, and we're all kind of sick and tired of SaaS in schools because we have all of these unused applications that we're paying monthly fees for. The way that technology is evolving, a lot of that is going away. We're paying for what we need, and this is really a utility for our partners.
And I'll just mention what I really like about the levels is that we've run through things through level one. If we get 100% back, we're pretty good, or 95 to 100%. If we really wanted to go to that next level, it's not like, oh, we really wish now it's going to charge us an extra, or in addition, the whole they actually discount as a result of already running it through level one. It doesn't like it's not like a miss that you end up having to pay more. I think that I really appreciate that the way that they have that structured as well.
Some of this stuff we've covered already, so I don't really need to reiterate, but you're going to get that WCAG standard, you're going to get that compliance report, and then you're going to be able to make defensible progress against those deadlines that are coming. Rachel, I don't know if you want to share. We kind of talked about some of this stuff. Should I just go and put the QR code up on
I
the
think they're
screen?
ready for the QR code, and that way you know what to do next.
Yeah, so here it is, folks, and thank you for the time. I know we're coming up on it, which is why I wanted to get to this slide. What we would recommend, right, is if you have your phone handy, go ahead and scan that QR code now. You're going to be able to do a couple things once you do that. One, you'll be eligible for those 100 free credits. Someone will reach out to you to make sure you get them. You can see this with your own documents. You can set up a consultation to actually walk through those documents and see the process for yourself. At that point, you can decide if this is right for you or not. You'll be able to get the fine print on that purchase and referral partnership pricing. And then, you're going to be among one of the first PAIUs in the partnership, which is great because I think it shows the seriousness with which you take, compliance and accessibility more so with your community. So I'll leave that up for a second. Just note too that I will send out an email after the fact with the recording. If you watch this on demand, you'll have that as well, and you can scan here or you can access it in that email. But the quickest, fastest way to get started is right here on the screen in front of you. As you're doing that, I just want to take a minute, Rachel, to thank you. I want to thank Bucks IU for working with us to create this opportunity for other IUs across the state and in the different regions. Again, we think in our community, we heard about this challenge, that people were struggling to figure out how they were going to meet it by the deadline. Even though the deadline got extended, there weren't really a lot of good options out there. We think we've found a better mousetrap in what AOD and ArtScan are providing. We want to make sure it is accessible to as many districts as possible so that we can get out from under the challenge of accessibility and start to get to the beauty of it, which is making sure everybody has access to the documents that they need to achieve their potential.
Well, and a big thank you to my IU colleagues who joined today's call. We really appreciate your interest, and the hope really is that we have found that we're able to share this tool with you, and you'll realize some time savings and some process savings as we all move forward with digital accessibility for our community. So, really hope that you'll find some value in that, and appreciate you spending some time with us this morning.
Thanks all. Really appreciate it. Have a great rest of your day. And we'll be doing more of these along the way. So, stay tuned and let us know if you have any questions.